Everyone, look in the direction I'm pointing. The Russian Navy is slowly sailing into Zhangjiang military port. Along the coast of the South China Sea, a formation of Russian naval vessels arrived for a visit to Zhangjiang. The 20,380 class light frigates Perfect and Cold appeared together for public viewing. Though compact in size, the ship is fully equipped, capable of air defense, anti-submarine operations, anti-ship missions, and land attack tasks. A small platform with strong firepower, multi-role capability, and well-rounded performance. What did I notice at the stern? This small hatch can open and close. What exactly is its purpose? Follow military enthusiasts to the front line for a close-up look at Russia's active frontline warships. To me, these two ships represent the forward-looking spirit of the Russian Navy. This episode of Military Fans Travel the World features my visit to see the warships in Zhangjiang. On April 15, 2026, the Russian Navy's frigates Perfect and Lin, along with the medium-sized tanker Petchenga, arrived in Zhangjiang, Guangdong province for a 5-day friendly visit. Guided by the Chinese Navy's vessel Chenzhou, the Russian formation flying both the Chinese and Russian flags slowly docked. A welcome ceremony was held by the Chinese side at the pier. Zhao Yunpeng, a longtime military enthusiast, has spent years studying naval ships from around the world and has published books featuring numerous detailed ship illustrations drawn by himself. However, most of his past research focused on classic Soviet-era warships, and he has had limited opportunities to observe modern Russian Navy vessels up close. This time, he traveled to Zhangjiang specifically to examine these advanced ships at close range. Everyone, look where you're pointing. The Russian Navy's Perfect, Cold, and Petchenga are slowly entering Zhangjiang military port. The three ships have already arrived at Zhangjiang port. In a moment, I'll take you aboard for a closer look. The two main combat ships featured in this visit, Perfect hull number 333 and Rinji hull number 343, are both part of the Russian Navy's Project 20,380 Corvette class. This class represents a new generation of multi-purpose stealth warships designed for offshore operations and currently serves in the Russian Pacific Fleet. Once aboard and observing the ships up close, Zhao Yunpeng immediately noticed how their exterior design differed from the impressions he had formed over many years of research. In my earlier understanding, what impression did Soviet or Russian warships usually give us? Their superstructures always seemed cluttered. Various electronic systems, radars, and antennas, so many that they appeared overwhelmingly complex, almost like a cluster of grapes. The ship also carries a substantial amount of onboard weaponry, including numerous anti-ship and anti-air missiles, making the internal spaces feel quite compact. However, the new Project 20,380 warship has a much cleaner and more streamlined appearance compared with earlier designs, with brighter surfaces and clearer structural lines. The shift from a dispersed layout to a simplified, stealth-oriented design reflects a significant evolution in the Russian Navy's design philosophy for the Project 20,380 frigate. And despite the two ships appearing similar at first glance, there are many detailed differences and upgrades between them. Standing next to me now is the Perfect, and behind me is the Cold. Although both belong to the Project 20,380 Corvette class, a closer look at their development history shows that they should be considered improved variants of the original design. We often refer to the Perfect as a baseline model, but there was actually a prototype ship built before it. The prototype originally used the Kashtan gun and missile system, which was later replaced by a vertical launch system for surface-to-air missiles, then upgrade already reflected in this ship. The Project 20,380 frigate is primarily intended for offshore missions such as anti-ship warfare, anti-submarine operations, air defense, and land attack support. The first ship of the class, Guardian, began construction in 2001 and entered service in 2007. Because the lead ship's air defense capability was limited, the Kashtan system behind the main gun was replaced with a vertical missile launcher starting from the second ship, and the design was gradually refined into the configuration seen today. From the basic model to the midlife improved version, each iteration represents the technological progress the Russian Navy has pursued in recent years. What do people often say? They look at this Russian vessel and note that it displaces just over 2,000 tons. At around 2,000 tons, it's often described as a small ship with big firepower. Yet to me, these two ships embody the forward-moving, innovative spirit of the Russian Navy. How should we describe it? Let's begin by examining the mast. Starting with a spot the differences approach, the mast structures of these two ships are noticeably different. First, look at the Perfect. Its upper structure forms an inverted trapezoid. On the Linji, however, the shape is a regular trapezoid. Why is that? The difference is related to the radar systems they carry. The radar is installed here, and inside the Perfect is a mechanically scanned passive phased array radar. Because it needs to rotate, the mast is shaped like an inverted trapezoid, wider at the top and narrower at the bottom to allow space for the radar to turn. Although it is also a phased array radar, being passive means it still requires mechanical scanning. But on the later Lin, the system was upgraded to a fixed panel active phased array radar, which no longer needs to rotate. However, because the radar cannot point directly at the target and is usually angled upward, this results in the trapezoidal shape. In simple terms, the Perfect uses a radar that must rotate to scan, so the mast is wider at the top and narrower at the bottom to provide space for its movement. The Ling uses a fixed electronically scanned radar, so its mast is shaped like a pyramid, narrow at the top and wider at the base. This contrast highlights the technological shift from mechanically scanned to electronically scanned radar systems. As a significantly upgraded model, the core advancement of the Linli is its dual-band integrated mast, which combines for S-band and for X-band active phased array radar panels into a single structure. The two frequency bands complement each other. The S-band handles long-range, wide-area searches, while the X-band focuses on close-range precision tracking and terminal guidance. Electronic countermeasure antennas are also integrated within the mast, forming a unified radio frequency combat system. The fully enclosed mast design not only reduces radar cross-section and enhances stealth performance, but also improves system responsiveness and resistance to interference. With this configuration, the Colt achieves a level of situational awareness that places it among the most capable ships of its size. There is another point to consider. Take a look at the Perfect, which features two separate masts. Why does it have two masts? When the Perfect was designed and built, its level of electronic integration was relatively limited. To put it plainly, issues such as electronic interference, communication signal conflicts, and system clutter could not be fully resolved at the time, so the equipment had to be separated. The large forward mast handles wide area, long-distance signals such as those related to air targets, while the aft mast houses optical and fire control systems, keeping them apart. By the time the Colt was developed, improvements in Russia's electronics industry allowed these systems to be consolidated into a single integrated mast. This integration reduces electronic interference, improves communication reliability, and further enhances the ship's stealth characteristics. This reflects the steady, incremental progress Russia has made in recent years. So when people describe these vessels as small ships with big firepower, what I see in them is the Russian Navy's drive for innovation. Moving from 2 mass to 1 may seem like a simple reduction in number, but in reality it represents a meaningful step forward in Russia's shipborne electronic integration technology. The Project 20380 is often described as a stealth Corvette, so since stealth is a defining feature, let's take a closer look at its stealth characteristics. In the early days more than a century ago, during World War I and World War II, naval vessels relied primarily on visual camouflage for stealth. The goal was to prevent the enemy from spotting the ship from a long distance. At that time, warships were painted with various patterns of horizontal and vertical lines so that, through a telescope, they blended into the waves and became harder to distinguish. Modern naval stealth does not make a ship invisible to the naked eye, but instead reduces the likelihood of detection by radar, infrared sensors, and sonar through comprehensive design measures. Simply put, the aim is to make the ship less noticeable within enemy detection systems, thereby greatly enhancing its survivability in combat. Today, with advanced radar and submarine technology, visual camouflage alone is no longer sufficient. So what kind of stealth is required? Generally speaking, stealth refers primarily to radar invisibility, how difficult it is to detect the ship on a radar screen. Achieving this begins with shaping the vessel appropriately. For example, the cold uses angled surfaces to deflect and scatter radar waves. This reduces its radar cross-section (RCS). Another measure is applying stealth coatings that further reduce radar reflection by scattering or absorbing incoming waves. Beyond that, there are 2 additional forms of stealth. One is acoustic stealth. A ship should not be detectable by an enemy submarine from dozens of nautical miles away before it even leaves port. To reduce noise, modern stealth ships use vibration-damping structures and sound-absorbing materials to limit the spread of mechanical noise. Propeller design is also optimized to minimize acoustic signatures. Another important aspect is infrared stealth, which is particularly relevant for the cold. At long distances, infrared sensors can detect heat sources, which can compromise the ship's concealment. To address this, the heat signature of the exhaust system, often referred to as the funnel, is reduced by cooling and dispersing the exhaust gases. Therefore, a fully capable stealth warship must achieve 3 things: radar stealth, infrared stealth, and acoustic stealth. Only then can it truly be considered a stealth vessel. As for the internal systems of the cold, their exact configuration is not visible from the outside and would require further study. Radar stealth relies on angled surfaces and absorbing materials. Acoustic stealth relies on vibration control and noise reduction. Infrared stealth depends on optimized exhaust and heat dissipation systems.